implication is that the plaintiffs are not always the end consumer. A plaintiff could be the bank who's now having to foot the bill to replace all these credit cards and debit cards. So, and there's been some litigation on their behalf against the retailers for causing this, but unfortunately, as far as I know, they haven't really succeeded in being able to recoup that cost, and it's a significant cost. But depending on the contracts that the various banks have with the retailers, they may or may not be able to get that cost back. So there's different lines of plaintiffs that get hit with this day one scenario. It is the consumers, but it's also the banks as well.
And there's different lines of defendants as well. Under E&O policies, you can maybe be able to attack at least the company that was involved, may be able to attack a vendor. If you're dealing with PCI compliance issues, there's vendors that sell the hardware that may be involved as well. So I think it's just not a focus on the affected people and the corporation, but there are a number of other companies and individuals that could be impacted as well.
One of the things that struck me when I looked at this was at least the CFO did something right he called TED. I mean, you really do something as opposed to nothing was the first right step this person took. And the other thing is this, if you're getting this call, you have to start to question things like, how do you know it's 10,000? Who told you? You're an expert on this. Have you really determined what the records look like and what's in there? How do you know? Does anybody in this room know what's on their laptop? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that struck me was, well, does this laptop provide remote access to bigger and better systems? That's a whole other level of a problem that if you don't think it through early, you may have not a 10,000 record problem anymore. So those are some of the thoughts that occurred to me. And I tend to be a little strident on this last point, which is, in my world, if you've got a truly lost laptop that's for a lot of different reasons, password, encryption issues, all those kinds of things, you are on notice of likely litigation in federal court. You may not get sued, but you're on notice. And so one of the things that I tell people, day one, first phone call is, let's talk about something called e-discovery and litigation holds. Because I certainly don't want to lose a case down the road because I didn't have that conversation up front.
And I think another important point with that is that just because you have an attorney involved doesn't mean that you can cloak all of your memos under the attorney-client privilege. And I think that's a big misconception right now. Everyone thinks we'll have the attorney on the call and everything's going to be protected. But states interpret the attorney-client privilege very differently, and you have to be careful. I mean, we certainly tried to shield a memo that way, but also if something is, if you're putting something in this memo or you're documenting something, you want to make sure that if you don't succeed in keeping it from other people's eyes, that it's written in a way that's going to, that you're not going to mind having it blown up at court.
See, now Jamie would tell you that none of it's protected, and
Right.
we will tell you that it's all protected.
Well, as soon as I get the privilege log, that's what I want. You know how that goes. And I think, too, John, the point you made, that the breach numbers always go up. You know, in the beginning, you always get a small number, and then it goes up. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but being really careful what you're going to represent publicly if it's going to not be accurate at the end of the day. You know, in a credit card situation, Visa and MasterCard have a lot of requirements after a breach that a retailer would have to meet, and they do their own really dogged investigation into the system because they have their own liability that they're trying to protect and push onto the retailer. So they're going to come in and really rip apart what went wrong. So you've got to be careful in, you know, how you assess or present to the public the extent of the breach when all of these various entities are going to be coming in to do their own forensics.